Mike, I would have to say I wouldn't be, and I say this in all honesty, I wouldn't be sitting here today with the business that I have today if I hadn't done KPI.
So when we met, you were in SG4, you said, yeah?
Yeah, it was way back.
Early groups. How did you come across Dent and KPI originally? Can you remember sort of how you sort of joined?
Yeah, gosh, it's a long time ago. What I do know, Mike, was I was looking around for some education because I felt out of my depth. And I tried one or two things, and I remember it wasn't a values match. And I remember when I came to an event with Dent, it felt like it connected with my values. It felt right for me. And that was my first exposure to Dent.
And what was business like back then? Can you remember?
Tough, horrendous. We had sold our brand new Kia Carnival to fund the business with 3 kids, 5 and under, I think, at the time. And we had a fairly significant overdraft. I think turnover was about 400,000. I think there were probably 5 in the team. And it felt really, really difficult. And part of the reason for that, Mike, is I had no idea what I was doing. I knew I was good at what I did. Like my core skill at the time was HR and recruitment. I knew I was good at that. I'd had great training in professional services, but I had no idea how to let anyone else know I was good at what I did.
You remember the feeling when you signed up to the program? How did you feel? Was there fear, apprehension? What was going on?
It was a big investment for us. I was showing Mark stuff online, because I was investing in the community, and he's like, it feels like a cult, Tash. But it was one of those things where I felt, even though it was a large investment for money at us at the time, particularly given where we were at financially, I had hope. I think for me, I could see that logically, I could see if I could do what I needed to do, I'd be okay.
That's a common bit of feedback we get, is that people look at the methodology and it's like, it makes sense to me. There's something about it. Can you speak to when you first learned about the 5 Ps, what your impression or resonance with it was?
Yeah, it did I read the book and it did make sense. And I knew I had it in me, was I think what I would say there. Like, it logically made sense. For me, I was a natural networker, so partnerships really resonated. I was terrified about the book piece, the published piece. I didn't write essays well when I was doing the HSC. Yep, I have a book. And that's actually the 2nd edition. So that worked well. Profile was the one that really appealed to me. I made the decision at the time that I wanted to get my mug on TV. And so that was really helpful. So a lot of the Ps really resonated. I just needed to work out how to make that happen. What were the steps to actually do those 5 Ps?
In KPI, we talked a lot about little wins. It's kind of big theme. Every time we get together, we talk about what are some of the little wins that we had recently, because as entrepreneurs, we're always so focused on the destination, we sort of lose sight of the progress we're making along the way. It's been how long since you first started KPI?
10 years. 10 years.
So 10 years on, reflecting and looking back over that period of time, what are some of the big wins that you've been proud of over the last, decade, and where is the business at today?
So, Mike, I would have to say I wouldn't be, and I say this in all honesty, I wouldn't be sitting here today with the business that I have today if I hadn't done KPI. I firmly believe that. So big wins for me is we were a state finalist in the Telstra Best of Business. There are 20,000 nominations for that. That was in 2023. And we got down to the last 6 in New South Wales. So incredibly proud of that. And I think why I'm so proud of that is it's not just about the 5 Ps, it's about running a great business as well. So that's a major thing. The other big thing is, I set that goal back 10 years ago that I wanted to appear on TV because that gave me more eyeballs. And since January, I've been on Sunrise 5 times, and they are telling me I'm their go-to person in the HR, recruitment, HRIS, anything in the workplace space. And we, off that, have already got an ideal client who will probably spend about $60,000 with us this year. So I could never afford to get those eyeballs. So that's a pretty big win. The revenue's increased fivefold since then. We've been increasing revenue by 20 to 40% year on year, bar the COVID year. And the team is now at 16 heads and about 10 FTE. And I now feel like I'm really well positioned in terms of my product, my process. We are built to sell, and we're already being approached. People keep telling us that they're surprised when they come to us. Whilst we've grown, we're not in that sweet spot to sell yet, but they all think we're bigger than we are, which I think is fascinating. And that the whole perception versus reality thing, I think. And the other thing I would say, big win for me, is the people that I've connected with through my experience with Dent and KPI. I am still in touch with a lot of the mentors and the coaches, but not only that, my cohort have become friends, and they're business friends. And what I love about them is they're great to go out and drink with and have fun with, but we solve business problems. And my accountability group, which I think was really special, went on for about 6 years after KPI. It had a life of its own, and those girls have become really great friends of mine. So I think, I have a beautiful bunch of girlfriends in my personal life, but they're not all business people. And so we don't have business conversations, where what I love about the cohort, male and female, that I've got out of Dent is we have really good fun times together, but we also have great business conversations and solve each other's problems.
Yeah, I think that's one of often the fears that we have about joining any kind of community, because it's a big investment of money, but also time. And I'm imagining for anyone watching this, or if it's for you, one of the big fears is, am I going to be surrounded by people like me, or am I going to be surrounded by people I want to become, as opposed to, people that look up to me and see me as the example. So did you find a nice mix in the community of, people you aspired to be like and people that you could lift up as well?
Definitely. And I think, when you do it, there are people who are particularly good at profile, and then there are people who have a niche in partnerships. So I think what you get from it is you learn collectively from everyone, not just who are the mentors and, the coaches, but you learn from each other, because we all come to it with a certain level of business experience. For me, a lot of them would tap on my shoulder for information around HR or recruitment stuff. But there were other people. I remember Joanne Fiedler, I think her name was, was already an author. She'd already written books. So that was, something she could share, and we could leverage off her because she'd already done it. So she had, value add on top of what Andrew Griffiths was always teaching us. And I've gone on to do training with other people that I met through KPI. So my education journey started with KPI, but it definitely didn't end. And I've gone on and spent an exorbitant amount of money on my business education. But again, I wouldn't be sitting here today if I hadn't done that. The Sunrise work is fantastic, but I went on and did media training with Sam Elan and Media Maneuvers. So it took a couple of years for that to happen. But when it happened, I had the framework and I could prepare and go in and deliver it to a level that they keep asking me back. So I think if you think KPI is the end of your journey, I think that's wrong. I think it's the start of your journey. And I think as business owners, we have an obligation, especially as time is passing and change is so rampant these days. You absolutely have to keep investing in your education and keep getting better at what you do.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Looking back over all the 5 Ps, which of the Ps had the biggest impact for you?
Yeah, I would have to say number 1, published, because I didn't think I was capable of writing a book. I was remembering sitting in that first class and thinking, do I really want to do this? This feels too hard. But I did it, and I now have a book from hire to fire and everything in between. And what that's given me is much more credibility. So I do a fair bit on ABC Radio, and they always plug the fact that I'm an author when they're introducing me. So I think that really works. Prior to doing KPI, I knew I was good at what I did, but there was no social proof. And I think when you have a book, you have social proof. I can remember Andrew Griffiths saying to me, it doesn't even matter if no one reads it. The fact that you've got a book actually works. And I really, truly believe that. And it's really helped. The other one, the big one for me, is around partnerships. I've really invested in that, and I've developed relationships with large corporates that put me in front of their audience. And again, it comes back to the book. Like, I have credibility because I've got that book. And I now have, some of the largest companies in Australia putting me in front of my ideal clients to chat about what I do. And that is incredibly powerful. Now, I can't imagine prior to KPI that any of those guys, other than the one that I maybe worked for, would ever consider doing that for me. Why would they? Who am I to be approaching them? So I think it gave me the confidence. And with that pitch, I could actually pitch them an idea that made sense or value to them. I remember when I pitched, and, having the book was incredibly helpful to that. And I actually pitched one of the large corporates to say, why don't you write the foreword in the book? And then you can send it out to all your workers' comp clients. Now, that actually didn't come off because the guy moved. But the point was, I had the idea and I was able to get it across the line and agreed with him before he moved to another job. That would have never, ever crossed my mind prior to doing KPI. So I think it gives you a lot of tools. And I think I share that, Mike, not because it was a success, because it didn't actually happen. But I think what we need to do when we're applying this is you're going to try things. Some of it will work, some of it won't. But you actually have a toolkit or a suite of ideas and a process and a framework in which to try stuff. And some stuff will work and some stuff will fall through, but they may even come back in another organization to you because they liked your idea previously and it was worthwhile doing. So I think it's around iteration, and it's around having the confidence and the tools to actually try some of this stuff.
Thinking back, was there any real light bulb moments you had where maybe there was a thing that was shared, a framework, a maxim even? Any real light bulb moments stand out?
Yeah, the two that really stand out for me, Mike, and I've gone and done it, was income follows assets. So that one, I'm a consulting business in essence, and I can remember I learned that no one is ever going to think you're worth what you think you're worth, and people will quibble over your hours. So you want to have income that comes off an asset you've built. So we built a tool, a diagnostic tool. It's a piece of software that we've built from scratch. It started as an Excel spreadsheet, and it's now called Employee Metrics. And it's a diagnostic tool which assesses a business current levels of HR compliance, risk, and best practice, puts a traffic light report on it, does recommendations, and the latest iteration even does a HR strategy for the next 12 months. Now, the beauty of that is I have something called accessorial liability, which is a risk in Australia, which means if I continue to work with an organization that I've advised them that they're doing something wrong, I am also on the hook from a breach perspective. So we now don't work with anyone unless we've put employee metrics over their business. One, it enables us to open the hood and we actually see. Often we're called in on a problem, like someone's done something at the Christmas party they shouldn't have done, where this gives us an opportunity to look at everything that they've got in the business. So it gives us a pipeline of work too, to actually say, because often our clients don't know what they don't know. They don't know they've got a problem. But the beauty of that is not that. The beauty of that is all the data that it's collecting and the fact that it will ultimately give us the ability to do best practice by industry. So I always talk about the fact that Mark and I are going to retire to a yacht in Greece off the back of employee metrics selling while I'm asleep. The second big one for me is you get what you pitch for and you're always pitching. And that mantra has really worked for me, just to give me a little kick up the butt, to be honest, Mike, sometimes to go, just have a go. The worst thing they can say is no. And what have you learned from that? You may have learned that you did something slightly wrong, or it just wasn't the right time for that person. But as long as you do it in a polite way, you're going to be memorable. I have people coming back to me 6 years after I did a speaking gig to say, I saw you 6 years ago doing a speaking gig. I'd like to work with you now. And it's like, wow, I didn't even know you were in the audience 6 years ago, but now you're coming back to me. We had that happen with somebody, and she introduced a friend in London who was starting up a business here. And that ended up to be one of our biggest clients that year. They've now grown on and evolved, and they've got their own HR team, which often happens with our clients, and that's absolutely fine. But it never would have happened if I wasn't on that stage speaking.
Amazing.
And that's really powerful. It is really powerful. And I forget that I've even done that gig 6 years ago, but it had an impact on someone there.
What was the biggest struggle in kind of going along the journey? I'm sure you faced some resistance and some objections and like, yeah, guys, but do I really need to do this? What came up for you?
I think for us, Mike, we were a young family, husband and wife business team. And as I said, we sold our car to start it. Financially, when we started KPI, we were in our overdraft. We traded our way out of it. I think for me, it was incredibly stressful in a husband and wife business because we were all in, boots in, all in. And to a certain extent, my husband wouldn't mind me saying this because this was sort of my idea to do this business, and he is an incredibly useful and incredibly important part of the business, but he's very much the back office and I'm the front office, and it was my dream. So I felt an incredible amount of pressure, Mike, to deliver. Like I'd had this idea, we had gone boots and all in, and I actually had to make it work. I had to come up with how the hell are we going to make this dream come to a reality. So I think for me, that was a lot of the struggle. I am a driver by nature. Like when the pressure's on, I just keep running harder. And, I just kept trying and trying and trying. But, there were times where it was very, very difficult. We thought we would lose our house before we decided to sell it, that it would be taken from us. So, I think there are always for everyone, no one does this lightly. I usually say to be an entrepreneur, you need three things. You need to be incredibly resistant to take the knocks, dust yourself off and get back on. You need to be incredibly optimistic to know that with hard work and effort, it will turn out okay in the end, and and that's training is a big part of it. And I think also, Mike, you need to be a little bit naive, because I think if many of us knew then what we know now, we may not have been brave enough to start. And I think those things have served me well. And I think, the other big thing I would say is you have to invest in yourself. I see a lot of people start businesses and they don't do any training and they wonder why it fails. And the failure rates are huge. I think it's something like 50% of businesses in Australia fail in the first year, another 50% of the first 2 years, another 50% in the next 2 years. And only 1% of businesses in Australia get over $1 million worth of revenue in 7 years. And we did that. But I think a lot of the reason those businesses fail is they don't invest in themselves. They don't give themselves the opportunity to actually succeed. They think they can wing it on their current experience. But I think most of us come to being business owners having done other stuff. And you might be great at whatever you do, whether it's HR or real estate or whatever. But you've got to be better at more things as a business owner, and KPI and DENT helps you with a big component of that.
Looking around your life today and all that you've achieved in the business over the last decade, you've 5x revenue, you're doing over 2 million in revenue today compared to 400,000 when you started. But more than just the money, I'm curious to know what's been the ultimate victory or triumph for you? What's been most meaningful in the journey?
I think one, Mike, that we're still here, but two, I'm incredibly proud of what we've built. We have a business with employees that have really high engagement scores. Our NPS score sits, everyone's going to be saying that I'm telling lies, but I call all our clients, and our net promoter score sits at over 90 rolling average for the last 6 months, and we've been doing it for 6 years. 50 is deemed excellent, 80 is world class. I am incredibly proud of what our team deliver to our clients day in and day out. And I can see now where I'm going. Like, I know I will exit this business and I will never have to work again. And that is going to give me the opportunity to do the next phase of my career, which is board roles, but also mentoring the next generation, in particular female entrepreneurs, because I think having done it with young kids, and I have kids that are still, my son wraps the books to get paid, all of that sort of stuff. They've been on the journey, warts and all. And so I'm just incredibly grateful or incredibly proud of what we've built and what it looks like now, but more, I know what the future holds. And I will be sitting on that yacht in Greece, somewhere between the next 5 to 10 years, sipping bubbles is what I like to do. And I will be incredibly proud of what I've achieved.
Natasha Hawker, congratulations.
Thank you.